Yeah, won't that be fun to add this? Ah, I love it.
Yeah. Yes.
Needs
Rex, what are your
neutrals.
thoughts?
Oh, I took
You're
a
the one
lot of notes.
who pointed us in Mike's direction. I'm
Yeah,
glad that you did. We just need to
goodness.
have Rex take care of all of our bookings, right?
Yes, there we go.
It's fun.
Rubbing my glee hands together. That was really good. I liked. Actually, Liz asked a lot of questions I was thinking about. I thought it was interesting how number 6 was a lot of people kind of have that "Am I good enough?" question.
The one that you have, right?
Yeah,
Rex?
and that was kind of
Yeah.
neat because that made me feel a little more related to people.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to ask was when I read the book, I got the impression that primal imprinting in childhood is almost unavoidable. Because you're like, I think you said something like, no matter how good you are, like you're going to miss something. And it's almost like
Yes.
there almost has to be a primal imprint. Do you
Yes.
agree with that? And what do you think about that?
Totally. Yeah. I have a lot of parents ask me, like, oh, Mike, how do I stop my child being imprinted with a primal question, right? And I have to remind them that there's nothing wrong with a primal question. The only thing that's wrong is when we live in the scramble or we're unaware of our primal question, because we're human beings. We all have emotional needs. And the goal is not to stop a primal question being imprinted, but to, I think, help guide our children through whatever their highest emotional need might be. And so I think that's a big distinction, because I do not want to put out any sort of tool book assessment that says there's now something wrong with you. What I'm trying to actually do is say there's something really right with you, and let's normalize that, and let's have more compassion for ourselves around the needs that we had as children and now as adults.
Yeah. You say
I
that
love that.
beautifully. You say that so beautifully, Mike, especially when you talk about the message that we're already sharing with the world, right? The message that happens to be in line with our most primal question.
Yes,
Naturally, we
exactly.
just already do that. I think that's, you definitely have that positive spin on this, without a doubt.
Yeah, we had a guest
Yeah.
on last week who's actually or a couple weeks ago, Nate Bagley. Am I saying that right, Dave?
Nate Bagley, sure.
And
Yeah.
he liked to say that his topic was roommate syndrome, and he said it's not a what did he say? It's not a problem, or
Yeah.
it's a feature. And I was like, primal questions are kind of a feature too,
Yeah.
because you talk a
Yes.
lot about you mirrored it in perfect symmetry with your primal question is your primal truth,
Oh, nice.
which makes you like an expert on loving people or
Nice.
making people feel wanted or making people feel good enough or people safe.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was
Yeah,
really
that idea of us taking our question and putting it over somebody else, and really maximizing that gift. I always say, like, I have a PhD in safety because I've been studying it my entire life. Okay. And
Yeah.
Rex, you have a
Yeah.
PhD in value and good enoughness because you've been studying it your entire life. And that's a real gift.
it was
Like, Rex, your question says, I release value, I see value, I can tap value because you understand it, unlike I understand it. Because I'm thinking safety, but you're thinking value.
That
Yeah.
is, it's quite a revelation too to discover that, because I remember years ago I took a business course, and I remember the teacher talking about value, and that word just stuck with me. And then reading your book like knocked more dust off the picture I'm trying to wipe off and see of myself and get a clear image of, and
Yes.
that was that's incredible.
Well, it's what you're doing today, right? You're creating value. You are building things of value. You are helping Dave and Liz put this podcast together. Like, that's just your natural flow as a human being to add value, create value, and it's really quite a gift. And so lean into it, embrace it, and stop asking the question, am I good enough? And start living in the truth of I am good enough. I do have, I'm loaded with value.
Yeah, that's the hard part to do, is to remind myself, and I think it would be for anybody, is to keep But as you do it, you get more used to doing it over and over again and
Yes,
improving that.
totally.
Can somebody's primal question change over time, or is that possible?
Great question. Yeah, I was actually again this Intenso I was doing this past weekend. One of the things that happens, and the research points this out, is that we have kind of what I'd say our primal question will get imprinted in our early childhood. But what can happen is trauma later on in our life can almost add a secondary primal question to the mix. So I'll give you an example. Um, let's say my primal question is, do I have purpose? All right. Like, do I have a purpose? And that was kind of what got imprinted in my early childhood. But then let's say God forbid, I'm attacked in an alleyway in Chicago. There's a violent attack. I get robbed. Well, that traumatic event is now going to bring to the surface the "Am I safe?" primal question, right? So now I certainly have the childhood imprint of my primal question of purpose, but now I have, because of the trauma that I've experienced, this new question that's being added to the mix, and both will have to be managed and brought into kind of healing in that situation. I will say trauma. Anytime we're in trauma or chaos, all seven will be need to be managed, not just one.
Makes sense.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
How fun to have created something like this. My gosh. Can't even imagine. It's very so cool. Hey, Rex, did you have Jessie take the assessment too?
I did. And she was, am I loved, am I wanted? Which kind of leads me to the next question is, what happens when you have two people who have the same question but are still answering no to each other? Can that happen?
Yeah. So one of the things that, again, the research shows is the closer your question is to your spouse's question, fundamentally, the easier it's going to be for you to learn to answer that with a yes. Now, you still have to have a conversation about it. You still have to let your spouse know how to answer your primal question with a yes. But Jessie is your wife?
Yes, Jessie.
She's going to understand your primal question a lot more than, say, if the questions were farther away. So I have a friend in New York. He's a question 7. Do I have purpose? His spouse is a question 1. Am I safe? Their biggest issue in their marriage is trying to manage their primal questions, because they're the exact opposite. He's wanting to go change the world, travel, go to dangerous places, have purpose, have meaning, significance. She's like, no, I just want to stay home and be safe and have you here with me.
Oh, very interesting.
So that's the dynamic, because the question is and she does not understand his need for purpose, and he sure does not understand her need for safety, because it's a 1 and a 7. But where you guys, the closer you are, the more likely you are to understand the emotional need.
Wow, that's incredible.
Man.
You were saying something before. Oh, it reminded me of a quote that Dave likes to give about when we get emotionally triggered, we start imagining everything is wrong. And I remember Dave says this a lot by Seneca about we suffer more in imagination than reality.
Nice.
And to realize that too, I think helps. At least for me, it helps me a lot when I'm talking with my wife, or we're having a debate about something, is realizing, gosh, all the things I'm thinking are not true. And I just need to be in reality here and really accept what she's telling me, which isn't really a question. It's more of a statement. But you had said that, and it just reminded me of that, of not letting our imaginations run wild and paint these pictures. It's got to be difficult for that one couple you just said, who's opposite ends of the spectrum, where they're just, how do they handle that? How do they're stuck on the scramble.
Yeah, it is, it brings a lot of heartache to both of them, because they struggle to enter into the perspective of their spouse because it's just so foreign to them. And now they're a great couple. They have really figured it out, but without question, he will say, "This is the issue in our marriage. This is the thing that we have to continually nurture and figure out."
Even like on date night, right? How adventurous are they willing to be, right?
Totally.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Oh, I'm going to be looking for that. Mike, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this has been great. Our hour's almost up.
Yeah. I thought this was I thought it was really neat. I even liked how it's the primal question because going into emotions, our emotions are our most primal part of our brains and our psyche and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And being triggered, everything has to go through that part of the brain before we make decisions. So it was fascinating to me.
It's very core to who we are. And that's why I use the language primal, because it is, I can't not need safety. It's just like
fundamental to who you are.
I don't know what others sort of, it's the essence of who I am and my identity. And it's like, I can't imagine any other way to sort of operate.
Right.
Now I don't have to be controlled by that. I don't have to have that be a negative thing, but it is something that I must embrace about who I am. Yeah. As all of us must. It's like, let's stop working against this thing and embrace it, and use it as like an asset versus a liability. By the way, one other little thought on Primal Questions. Because you don't, let's say, Rex, your question is, am I good enough? Well, the other thing is, you don't have to worry so much about the other questions. It's almost you're inoculated, you're vaccinated against having this real strong need for safety, which also gives you a real strength. Now, you are working with the am I good enough question, right?
Yeah.
You have to manage that. But there's other parts of the emotional needs that you actually, I tell my wife this all the time. It's like, I don't really care if I feel loved or wanted. Yeah. I just, that's like, it's nice, but it's not the driver for me. So it's, in a way, we can almost eliminate some of the other needs as having a lot of control over us.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's true.
It really makes it much more focused, doesn't it? If I mean, right? We want to be efficient and effective in our relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
exactly.
That's one way of
say
doing
it,
it.
Liz.
That's good.
Sweet. A lot more efficient.
Sweet. Thank you for such a tool, Mike.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission